Hello friends, it's Vio, and today we're going to be looking at Mod Soffan's proposal for the Wilderness extension. If you have no clue what that is and have no idea what's going on, I will sum it up for you briefly. Back in 2019, Abyss, the PK streamer, had an idea for an extension to the Wilderness. So that's a whole new section of the map that would be added into the northern end in the hopes of improving the PvP activity. Now he put his ideas complete with concept art and a mock-up map into a video in mid-2021. That video got over 30,000 views, whole lot of support behind it, and Jagex have since taken that idea and have been workshopping it as part of the old school RuneScape game jam. If you don't know what a game jam is, basically it's a thing where the Jagex content developers develop content, because that's literally what it says on the wiki page, and it also says that the content they make here will not necessarily be added to the game or even pulled, but we have seen things from Game Jam like Modash's updates to LMS. Those have actually got into the game, so there is a good chance of the Wilderness extension actually becoming a reality. Now, Mod Soffan has recently tweeted that he's going to be working on this again as part of the next Game Jam, so in this video I'm going to do three things. One, I'm going to take a look at what he's proposed and break that down for you, so I'll explain every section, every feature in detail. Two, I'm going to compare those to Abyss's original vision, so see what the differences are between Abyss's map and what Mod Soffan has proposed. And three, I'm going to do my own analysis and evaluation and offer my own thoughts, ideas, and feedback on the whole thing. And just before we get into that, whenever it comes to Wilderness or PvP updates, there is one person's voice we need to hear, and that is his lordship. So let's take a walk up into the Wilderness to the bandit camp, where we will find the Lordship of the Lake. O Lordship of the Lake, what is your wisdom?
Jagex are almost deleting content already. Every time they carelessly add new content, a piece of old content in the game dies off somewhere. Good game development increases the possibilities for gameplay rather than replaces them.
That's a good wisdom. I think the Lordship wants us to do two things. One, try to build upon and improve existing content instead of replacing it, but at the same time we should also take care to make sure new content doesn't immediately become dead content upon release if it doesn't attract players or serve a purpose. And with that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at Mod Soffan's proposal for the Wilderness extension, and I'll go through everything in the order that Abyss did in his original video, and then I'll take a look at the new and original stuff afterwards. Let's start with the Bridge of Fate. This is the main way to access the new area from the south. It's located just north of the deserted keep, and unlike the rest of the Wilderness, in the new area combat levels do not matter, so a level 3 can get one shot by a 126. Abyss called his the Bridge of Faith, and I don't think he expected combat levels to not matter at all. I think he just thought the Wilderness would just keep going up to level 60 and 70 and so on. Personally, I think Fate is the better name, so I appreciate that. As for the combat levels not matching, it is the most northern and deepest part of the Wilderness, and it makes sense that it's the most dangerous, so I see no problem with this either. Next up, we have the Corrupted Revenant Ruins in the northeast corner, which is just Revs 2 basically. It's a multi-combat Revs dungeon, but unlike the Rev caves, you can't just walk in here. The caves are locked, and the lock will reset every month. In order to unlock them, you have to do something at the place called the Resource Area. I'll talk more about that later, but it appears to be just skilling. When they're unlocked, there's 150k fee to enter, which is lost on death. Inside, multi-combat area, and there are Corrupted Revs, which have better loot than the standard Revs. Now, Abyss's idea was the Rev Graveyard, and he came up with this when the Rev Caves were multi, so this was supposed to be the single combat equivalent of the Revs, and it was just Revs in a graveyard, but they would also drop a key which would give access to a dungeon with the Rev boss, but there were no special mechanics to prevent access to the area to begin with. Okay, so I don't like this for a couple of reasons. One, I don't like the idea of entrance fees to begin with, either with this or the original Revs or with the Wildy Boss rework caves. It just doesn't make sense for Wilderness dungeons to have a toll. I see the point of it, of course, it's to cut down on the looters and raggers by making them risk something, but I'd like to see a more sensible and logical way of ensuring that. Maybe require a charge Rev bracelet with a certain amount of charges, or a specific item that will always be lost on death, but a cash fee just seems like an awkward fix to me. Secondly, locking the caves and having to skill to unlock them every single month seems like an unnecessary extra step that doesn't really solve a problem. The caves are dangerous enough as they are, and in the deepest part of the Wilderness, it's multi-combat, combat levels don't matter, you can't teleport out. Now, to make it even more difficult by having another requirement to even get there in the first place, I think that will just make it too much of a pain for most people, and they'll just stick with the singles caves. The only reason that people would make the effort for the new ones is if the drop rates were insane. And the third problem, say it is, and people actually go there and they get mils worth of loot in their inventory, and then they get hit by a clan. In multi. in the furthest possible place away from the safe zone and the bank, and they have to tank the length of the map in order to get to safety and keep that loot. I don't think that's going to happen. And just to be clear, I want multi-revs back. Absolutely. And I don't think any of the ideas that Mod Soffan has come out with are completely bad ideas at all. I just think some of them need some work, and this is definitely one of them. Okay, so let's move on, and we have two areas to discuss now because they both seem to stem from the same idea. The first is the extension to the Wilderness Agility course. It's at the Agility Training Arena, it requires level 75 Agility to enter, and you get Sears XP rates. It's also said to work like the Agility Pyramid, and I'm not sure what that means, either in layout or if you get some sort of reward for completing each lap. This stems from Abyss's idea of the Master's course, which was primarily a high-level agility course with high XP rates, but it also incorporated other non-combat skills like thieving. That aspect seems to have been separated now, and I'll talk more about that in a second, but the agility course extension we see now is just for agility. I think this is a good idea, but it does need a buff, because if it's level 75 with Sears XP rates, why not just go to Sears? Sears is level 60, not in the Wilderness, and you get Marks of Grace from it. So either the XP rate needs to be improved to somewhere between Sears and Artie or Sears and Prif, or you should get a really good financial reward like an artifact worth 100k for every lap you complete. Now, in regards to the aforementioned skilling aspects, we now have the resource area 2. I assume this is somewhat like the resource area 1, but the difference being you can possibly get double or triple resources, and to balance that out, there's no increase to the XP rates. But again, it's not a place you can just walk into. It's a work-in-progress idea that to get access to here, you need to do other unspecified things around the wilderness to either get a key or tokens for entry. Okay, so I'm going to straight up say this one I don't like the idea of, because remember what Lordship said in the beginning, we want to build and improve existing content, not replace it, and we already have a resource area 1 that is barely used. If we bring out a new, completely separate area that is just objectively overall better, then resource area 1 becomes dead content. And also, remember that this is the place that PVMers need to go to unlock access to the new Rev Caves, so the order of operations for that now is go to the deepest part of the wilderness, do unspecified stuff, unlock the resource area, go there and skill, unlock the Rev Caves, go there and PVM, and then die to a clan and lose all your stuff. Basically, I don't like the idea that so much stuff in the new wilderness is locked behind the equivalent of a mini-quest for players to do every time they want to kill some revs or mine some rocks. I would recommend scaling it back to closer to Abyss's vision, in which you had a place with revs, you can just go and kill them. An agility course, you can just go and train. The danger and difficulty comes from the fact that it's in the deepest part of the wilderness, and that is enough. We don't need to overcomplicate it any further. Anyway, let's move on, and let's talk about an area from Abyss's map first, because the area itself doesn't make it onto the new map, but we do see some aspects of it. And this is the Mineshaft, which basically is a hub for a whole bunch of new, unique resources. We would have the spec trees, which look awesome, by the way, props to Legend Arts. They would have dropped spec tree logs, we had Ethereum ore, because Abyss is a crypto bro, ghost sharks, a new high healing food, and white chin chompas, a new cute fuzzy animal to throw at people so that it explodes and dies. I hate the hunter skill. The first thing we see on the new map, instead of the spec trees, we have magic Ents on a little island in the very far north, and there isn't much information about them. They seem to be here more for lore purposes, as an explanation for why there's a little bit of greenery and growth around here. Now remember, we want to try and avoid new content becoming dead content immediately upon release. There are already a lot of Ents in low-level wilderness, and the few people actively farming them are not going to come to the very northern tip of the wild to do the same thing. So these should offer something different, and I have a suggestion. Woodcutting training at higher levels sucks, because if you're not doing Soliceps, you're doing the Blisterwood tree from 60 up till 90 for redwoods, and that is painfully slow. We are in need of a new AFK or semi-AFK method around roughly level 75. It should offer, say, 80 to 100k XP an hour, and these magic Ents seem like the perfect place for it. Plus, if they offer some decent GP an hour as well, it gives both skillers and PKers a reason to go there. There you go, something to think about. Now, instead of the white chins, what we have in the new map is a Skall Impling for Hunter, requiring level 78 to catch, rewards are to be decided, but it looks to have decent loot, as well as a new unique ring which offers one of only 2 methods of teleportation so far to this new area. This I'm totally happy with. It's new and unique, the skull suits the theme, it's got good reason for people to want to go for it. Yeah, no complaints, nice one. Now we have to talk about the safe zone. I'm not going to try and say that name. I'm going to call it the safe zone, and it is a town. It's called a wilderness city, but it's a town, and it is a full-on town. It's got a bank, it's got shops, it's got a church with an altar, it's populated by NPCs, and it's even got a quest. And I will talk more about the NPCs and the quest later on because there's a lot to go over, but basically the lore behind it is Fremenniks who were exiled from Relica sailed their way to the tip of the wilderness where they found the Ents who provided them with logs, the resource area for resources, and they set up a town in the depths of the wilderness. There's also a boat that gives you a one-way trip to Relica, but this is the place that the ring from the Skall Impling will teleport you to, and once you do some wilderness activities, you can also upgrade your enchanted lyre to bring you here as well. Now, Abyss had nothing like this. He had the Sacred Temple as his safe zone, which was basically just a smaller and simplified version of the Ferox Enclave, in that it had access to a bank, you could teleport out, and you couldn't enter if you're TB'd, but that was it. Just a small temple that served as a PK hub in the middle of the wilderness. Personally, I love the idea. We did have the small centralized hub that was just a bank as Bounty Hunter in 2007. Then we got the Ferox Enclave, which is a bit bigger, offered a little bit more, and looked amazing, of course. I still love that. And now we're going to get an actual town in the wilderness, in the place where all the activity is. It seems like the logical upgrade, and it makes sense. I am very much looking forward to seeing this. And again, I will talk a little bit more about the NPCs and the quests being offered as they are sort of the highlights of the whole thing, but as for having a wilderness city itself, yeah, let's do it. Now, the other thing to do with the Sacred Temple was that it had the entrance to God Wars 2. Now, we're not getting God Wars 2 in the new map, but we are getting a God Wars boss. This will be level 2500, making it the new strongest monster in the game. It will spawn in different locations, and there'll be announcements for before it spawns and when it's been killed. Rewards at the minute are drops that would be upgrades to God Wars weapons, so AGS, Ancient God Sword, that would make them best in slot, but they can only be used in the wild, as well as potential buffs for within the wilderness, similar to how the Maledictus offers buffs in the Rev Caves. But again, it's a work in progress, so all of this is not definitive as yet. I'm actually not going to give my own opinion on this because I'm not a PVMer. My Raids 1 kill count is about 3. My Raids 2 and 3 kill count are 0. So I really don't think I'm qualified to talk about this. Now, in principle, I believe that as the wilderness offers the highest risk, it should offer the highest reward, and that should extend to PVM in theory. Nonetheless, I will leave it to the actual PVMers and PVM clans to decide what they think about this. Next place to talk about is the Deathfire Volcano. This is a big volcano filled with fire and death. In the middle of the map, it's a multi-combat area, and you have to pay GP to enter, where you will find a new Red Dragon boss. Level 774 and better GP per hour than Vorkath. Potential drops are the Deathfire Visage, upgrade to the DFS, Lava Visage, which works like the Serp Helm but with fire protection, Vulcan's Bow, which is an upgrade to the D-Bow, making it spew lava and apply a new effect called Burn. This works like poison, but it's removed with anti-fire protection. And lastly, an attachment to the Thammaron Scepter that gives it a chargeable spell which also applies this burn effect. These last 3 rewards all require essence from the boss in order to charge them up. Now, Abyss had the Dragon's Lair, and the differences here are, instead of a red dragon boss, he had the Queen Black Dragon, and instead of the aforementioned drops, he wanted basically the new Karasi's sword, so a new best-in-slot sword that had a magic-based special attack. Again, PVM, not my area of expertise, so I'm not going to say too much. I do think Red Dragon Boss is a good substitution for the QBD, because we do have Elvarg, Vorkath, and the KBD, so we are missing that Red Dragon Boss, and this is a good opportunity for it. Now, as to the burn effect, I know we already have Poison, Venom, Disease, Corruption. I don't know if we need yet another status effect, but at the same time, the Debo spewing lava? That sounds seriously cool. But if it is added, then do we need to update existing content that might also apply the burn effect? Like, would you get it from Dragonfire from other dragons? Would the DFS special attack have it? Would Dragon Bolts have it? All these things will need to be considered, and everything needs to be balanced appropriately. Just a word of warning. Next is the Bounty Hunter Island in the far east, which you can access via a teleport from the safe area, and we don't actually know a lot about this, including what it actually looks like. It just says that it's a minigame with rewards that works like old BH, and potentially has some elements of King of the Hill. And that's basically it. Now, Abyss didn't have BH at all. Abyss had the Hidden Vault, which is something else entirely, and actually I was just rewatching his video where he says this.
Now, the Hidden Vault is my favorite part of Wilderness 2, and in my opinion, ties the entire project together.
Sorry, Alex, they got rid of it.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
But how the whole thing worked in summary was basically throughout the new wilderness area, you could do things that would earn you wilderness points. These points could be redeemed at the hidden vault for a variety of rewards, and at the top end of it, you had unique items which were incredibly valuable, comparable to how rares used to be. Now, instead of that, we have an empty island with the promise of BH. And I'm gonna be honest, it seems like not a lot of thought has gone into this. It actually feels like something that's just being thrown in because all the PvPers on Twitter keep saying bring back BH because they're just desperate for a PvP update. Now, I don't care much for BH. I still see it as the replacement for the Wilderness in 2007, and when it came to old school, it was just an annoyance when you were fighting in a BH world and your hunter showed up in max and PJ'd you when you were out of food. BH has not been a success story, and the main thing to consider here is that it's going to be a mini-game. It's not going to be a part of the new Wilderness, so my worry is that either the entire update will be held back by redeveloping BH, or, more likely, it'll just be done wrong yet again and end up as dead content. My honest opinion is maybe just leave this one out, just for now, and come back to it at a later date, after everything else is done and Jagex has the time to sit down and properly plan out a bounty hunter minigame that actually works. Or, bring back Fisticuffix, because that was BH, but better. Okay, so we've covered all of the updates and the changes to content that was in the original proposal. Now let's take a look at the new additions. We'll start by going back to the safe zone and talking about the Fremennik NPCs. These are also PK NPCs, old school's first PK NPCs. They have skulls, they're PKers, and yeah. What is a PK NPC exactly? If it's just an NPC that tries to kill players, isn't that also a highwayman, a dark wizard, even the wilderness-specific ones like the bandits and the dark warriors? PK stands for player killer, so I'm not sure about the level of sentience required for an NPC to call itself a player killer, because the NPCs in this game always refer to the player as the adventurer. So by that logic, these are Fremennik who go out looking for adventurers in the wilderness to murder and take their stuff. Even for the Fremennik, doesn't that seem a little bit evil? I would have another think about the Fremennik being the choice NPC here. If it was something like Black Knights or Zamorakian Wizards, totally, they can be PKers, make killing adventurers a profession, that suits them, but Fremennik I am not 100% sold on. Anyway, this leads us on to the quest, the first old school PK quest. It's called Skulled Up, it's a safe novice quest, and the goal is to introduce you to the area and help out one of the NPCs who wants to become a PKer. So you'll show him how to PK, teach him about lunar and ancient magics, bring him supplies, and at the end of the quest you need to win 3 fights against a strong PKer called Alicia. Now, I have a very unusual like for this, because as soon as I heard the concept, it immediately gave me a throwback to almost 20 years ago when I started playing this game in RuneScape Classic. On the tutorial island, there was a section that looked like the wilderness where you had a guide who taught you how the wilderness worked. And this is so reminiscent of that, an introduction via quest to the world of PKing. I have been saying for years that when it comes to people who have never set foot in the wilderness to do anything other than a clue scroll, the game should offer something that encourages them to go on the offensive, try out PKing themselves, and I think a PK quest is a great way to do that. Love the idea. I may have a suggestion to improve it though, and it comes from a tweet I made back in 2019 where I was talking about the Heroes and Shield of Arra quests where you need help from another player to complete them. And I had the idea for a quest where instead of getting help from another player, you had to fight them and kill them. The quest could be completed whether you won or lost, but the outcome would be different. And I think here, where we have a PK quest, at the very end, instead of making players fight an NPC that acts like a PKer, why not make them fight another PKer? Just an interesting idea. Moving on to more new content, we have 2 new bosses to talk about. First one is in the Rat Enclave, and it's a rat boss, which is a rat riding a rat. It's made to imitate a PKer, swaps weapons, uses overhead prayers, and the whole area is single. Potential drops include an item called a rat pack, which will transmog you into a rat and create 2 decoys that run in different directions, stun javelins, which appear to be the ranged equivalent of the D-spear, and cosmetic rat slippers. So obviously this is an homage to Abyss and his rat pack, and I respect that. My only concern is with the rat pack item, because when it comes to either escape or death in the wilderness, I think escape is far too common, so I'm always a little bit hesitant about new content which improves the escape option, but if the game can actually do something like this, I think it just sounds too cool to pass up on, to be honest. The next boss is on Skall Island, which is an island to the west of the new area. There is safe transport from the safe area for a small fee, and here you find Skall, level 912. Lore is the Fremenniks got access to Arceus magic and tried to create a dangerous thrall. It worked, but it didn't want to follow orders. Now this counts as undead, and potential drops are an upgrade to the Thamron Scepter that makes it autocast Lunar, and possibly an item that lets you combine the Wilderness Rings with the Dagannoth King's rings to create upgrades. Again, I would like to refrain from involving myself in the affairs of the PVMers, but I do have a couple questions with this one. It's a boss that was created with Arceus magic but lets you autocast lunar spells. And even then, isn't the Thamron Scepter primarily a PVM and anti-PK weapon? So how does lunar autocasting help you? Are you gonna humidify the PKers? Okay, we have one last new feature to talk about, and this is the Artifact Escort. This is an activity where there are 10 NPCs around the wilderness that you can buy artifacts from. These are items which are always dropped on death if you get PK'd, and you are given a random NPC to take the artifact to. If you do successfully, you are rewarded. So it's basically like how the Rev artifacts work, except you don't have to kill anything, you can just buy these, and the NPCs you take them to are random. At the minute, the reward shop only contains one item, the small safe pouch. This works like a looting bag, can only deposit in the wilderness, can only withdraw to bank. The difference is, this is not dropped on death. Everything you put in here, you keep. You can upgrade it to a maximum of 6 safe items, which increases the total number of potential items you can keep when you die from 4 to 10. I like this idea. And I like it for one reason in particular. It's because it's an activity that doesn't have any other prerequisites. Every other thing you need to do, like kill revs, you need combat levels for, or agility levels to get to the arena, or skill levels to collect resources. This one, all you need is a cash stack and the balls to brave the depths of the wilderness, and you might make some money from it. Solid idea, would love to see it. We're done. 21 minutes in, we've covered everything, we're all finished. And I know some of you are probably sitting here thinking, who is this guy, and why has he just ripped apart the proposal for a wilderness update that we have been begging Jagex for years? But don't forget, in those years we've also had 2 wilderness rejuvenations, the Rev Caves, all the subsequent updates to the Rev Caves. Wilderness updates can go wrong. And I get it, I've been involved in PvP myself since 2006. I'm still in a multi-clan now, I'm out there multiple times a week and I see how dead it is. I want multi-revs back, I want the activity, I want this wilderness extension. But this wilderness extension has been in the works since 2019. It's been 3 years. And if after 3 years, what we're seeing is still a little bit wanting and lacking and not quite up to the standard that we need for a comprehensive, effective solution to the problems of the wilderness, then someone needs to say that. And unfortunately, that someone appears to be me. So, Mod Soffan, if you're watching this, please do continue your work, because I really want this update, and everyone else really wants this update. Just consider this video constructive criticism. Maybe strong and harsh criticism at times, but still constructive, because if we are to get an update on the scale of this wilderness extension, then I just want to make sure it's done right, properly, and it works. That's all. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, friends, cheerio. So you'll show him how to PK, teach him about lunar and ancient... cat, down, oh, ow.